The massive ship hung in space like a silent whale, its metallic surface gleaming against the darkness of the star-filled background. Inside the UVAN exploration vessel Harmony, Lee Jae-hwan stood perfectly still, his hands clasped behind his back. He watched the alien ship approach with a calm that surprised even himself. Most people would be nervous. Most junior diplomatic officers would be shaking. But Jae-hwan was different. He had spent years preparing for this moment, studying every possible scenario of first contact. His dark eyes reflected no emotion, just a deep, waiting understanding. The Kuril Confederation's ship was beautiful in a way that hurt to look at. Its curves were too perfect, its lines too smooth. It didn't look like something built, but something grown. Jae-hwan knew this was typical of advanced alien civilizations. They didn't construct things, they cultivated them. A communication signal blinked on his screen. Principal Coordinator Rallin was ready to speak. The alien's image appeared, a creature with skin like polished blue-green glass and eyes that seemed to shift colors with every breath. Rallin looked important. He looked powerful. More importantly, he looked like he knew he was important and powerful. "Greetings, representatives of Earth," Rallin began, his voice smooth and slightly musical. "We of the Kuril Confederation welcome your emerging species to the galactic community." Jae-hwan caught the slight pause. The word emerging was not a compliment. It was a soft insult, a way of saying humans were young, unexperienced, and needed guidance. "Thank you, Principal Coordinator," Jae-hwan responded, his voice calm and clear. "We appreciate the opportunity to connect with your civilization." Rallin seemed pleased. His color shifted to a smug shade of blue-green. He clearly expected Jae-hwan to continue with more signs of respect, more indications of how much the humans would learn from the great Kuril Confederation. But Jae-hwan said nothing more. He just waited, his face a perfect mask of professional politeness. The silence stretched. On most first contact meetings, the junior species would rush to fill the quiet with words of wonder, with questions with obvious signs of being impressed. Humans, apparently, did not follow this script. Rallin's colors began to change. From smug blue-green, they started shifting towards a color that might represent confusion. Then a hint of irritation. "We have extensive protocols for integrating new species into our galactic framework," Rallin finally said, breaking the silence. "I'm sure your leaders will be most interested in our guidance." Guidance. There was that word again. A soft word that meant control. Jae-hwan's smile did not reach his eyes. "We look forward to learning," he said. But the way he said it made it clear. Learning was not the same as being told what to do. Something was happening here. Something that the Kuril Confederation would not understand until much later. This was not just a first contact. This was the first moment of a much larger story. A story that would change everything. Dr. Park Yeon-ji stood in front of a massive holographic display, her fingers tracing the complex timeline of human history. The room was quiet, filled with screens and data points that told a story most alien civilizations would never understand. Humans were not what they seemed. The hologram showed wars, disasters, near total destruction. It showed moments when humanity could have ended itself completely. But each time, something else happened, something unexpected. Survival was not just about strength, it was about change. Yeon-ji remembered the stories her grandmother told her, about the great climate wars of the mid-21st century, how entire countries disappeared under rising oceans, how millions lost everything. Most species would have collapsed. Humans redesigned themselves instead. When water became scarce, they built new technologies. When cities drowned, they created floating communities. When food production failed, they invented completely new ways of growing crops. Underground, in deserts, in space. The Kuril Confederation believed progress was smooth, a straight line from simple to complex. Humans knew better. Their history was a messy web of mistakes, corrections, and sudden jumps of understanding. Take technology, for example. The aliens would expect a neat progression. Humans had something different. They would solve a problem in ways no one expected. A solution that looked like a mistake from the outside would turn into a breakthrough. During the global resource conflicts, countries that were enemies learned to work together, not because they liked each other, but because they had to survive. Cooperation became a survival skill, not a political choice. Space exploration was another example. Other civilizations saw it as a slow, careful process. Humans saw it as an urgent need. They didn't wait for perfect conditions. They made perfect conditions happen. The first Mars colony was not a scientific mission. It was a desperate move by people who needed a backup plan for Earth. They didn't send their best scientists first. They sent people who knew how to survive. Farmers, engineers, people who could fix things with almost nothing. Yanji zoomed in on a particular moment in the timeline. The global pandemic of 2029. Most civilizations would have fallen apart. Humans created a global communication and support network in weeks. They shared research. They created vaccines faster than anyone thought possible. Each crisis was a learning moment. Each disaster was a chance to become something new. The Chiral Confederation saw humanity as a young species. They were wrong. Humans were not young. They were experienced in a way no other civilization could understand. Experience was not about age. It was about how many times you could fall and stand up again. How many times you could change everything and still remain who you were. Yanji smiled. The aliens were about to learn something important. Humanity was not a species to be guided. Humanity was a force of adaptation. And adaptation, she knew, was the most powerful thing in the universe. Kim Sung-min's fingers danced across the holographic display. Numbers, graphs, and complex economic models flickered around him like living things. The conference room was silent, but the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. The Chiral Confederation's economic representatives looked confused. They had come expecting to teach. Instead, they were about to be taught. Sung-min was not a typical economist. He was a storyteller who spoke the language of numbers. Behind him, a massive screen showed the history of human economic adaptation. It was not a smooth story. It was a wild, messy journey of survival and innovation. Let me explain how we think about trade. Sung-min began. His voice was calm, but there was something underneath, a kind of quiet energy that made everyone listen. The first slide showed Earth's economic history. Crashes, recoveries, complete system changes. Where other civilizations saw failure, humans saw opportunity. The Chiral representatives had a standard trade model. It was perfect, smooth, predictable. Sung-min was about to show them why perfect was not always the best. He started with a simple example. During the global climate crisis, some countries lost everything. Their traditional economies collapsed. But instead of dying, they invented new ways of creating value. Underwater farming communities, desert solar energy networks, space resource extraction teams. Each was a complete reimagining of what an economy could be. The aliens leaned forward. Their color-changing skin showed confusion, excitement, a bit of fear. Sung-min showed how humans approach trade differently. It was not about taking. It was about creating new value that nobody had seen before. A small island nation had turned its entire economy into a global information and skill-sharing platform. Another country had created a system where renewable energy was traded like currency. A former industrial region transformed itself into a global center for environmental repair technologies. The Chiral economic model was like a rigid machine. Humans had created an economic ecosystem, something living, something that could change and grow. Your systems are designed to protect what exists, Sung-min said quietly. Our systems are designed to create what could exist. He demonstrated a trade proposal that would make no sense to traditional economists. It involved 3 different planetary systems. It mixed resources that were not supposed to mix. It created value in ways that broke all existing rules. The Chiral representatives were silent. Their skin was shifting colors rapidly. a sign of deep mental processing. One of them finally spoke. "This is not economics," he said. "This is something else." Some men smiled. "This," he said, "is how humans survive." The economic world was about to change, and nobody understood this better than Kim Sung-min. Adaptation was not just a strategy. It was a way of life. The conference hall was quiet. Too quiet. Choi Min-seo stood at the center of the stage, surrounded by technology that looked more like art than machinery. The Chiral scientists watched her, their skin changing colors with every breath. This was not going to be a normal technology exchange. Min-seo was not just a scientist. She was a problem solver. Where others saw walls, she saw windows. Where others saw limits, she saw possibilities. Her first presentation seemed simple. A small device, no bigger than a human hand. To the alien scientists, it looked ordinary. But nothing about human technology was ordinary. "This," she said, holding up the device, "solves 3 problems that your civilization has struggled with for centuries." The room went completely still. The device was a water purification system, but it was more than that. It could take any liquid, even toxic waste, and transform it into clean, usable water. It could work in extreme conditions. It could be made with simple materials found almost anywhere. The Chiral scientists had complex water treatment plants that covered entire cities, massive systems that required huge amounts of energy. Min-seo's device could do the same job with a fraction of the resources, but she wasn't done. The next demonstration was about energy. The Chiral civilization had advanced solar technology. They thought they were the best. Min-seo showed them something different. Her energy collector was small. It could pull energy from multiple sources at once. Sunlight, heat, movement, even the tiny vibrations in the air. It didn't just collect energy. It adapted to whatever energy was available. One of the Chiral scientists raised a hand. "This is impossible," he said. His skin was turning a color that showed deep confusion. Min-seo smiled. Impossible was a word humans loved to hear. She explained how humans thought about technology. It wasn't about creating the perfect solution. It was about creating a solution that could change. A technology that could solve problems in ways nobody expected. The third demonstration was about communication. The Chiral had complex communication networks that took years to build. Min-seo showed a system that could be set up in hours, a network that could work even if most of its parts were damaged. "Your technology is like a perfect machine," she told them. "Our technology is like a living thing. It can heal itself. It can change. It can survive." The aliens were silent. Their skin was moving through colors faster than anyone had ever seen. Humanity was not just another species to be studied. They were something else entirely. A force of constant reinvention. Min-seo put down her device. The room was still. But something had changed, and everyone knew it. The border looked empty, but space was never really empty. Captain Kang Hyun-woo watched the screens. His fingers touched nothing. He didn't need to. The ship's systems were an extension of his thinking. The Chiral military squadron didn't know what was coming. 3 Chiral warships approached. They were beautiful machines. Perfect curves, smooth lines, weapons that could destroy planets. They thought they were strong. They were about to learn the difference between looking strong and being strong. Hyun-woo remembered his training. Not just military training. Survival training. The kind of training that came from a species that had fought for every inch of its existence. The Chiral communication channel opened. Unidentified human vessel. The alien commander spoke. "You have entered a restricted zone. Prepare for disciplinary action." Disciplinary action. Such a clean word for destruction. Hyun-woo said nothing. His team was ready, but ready looked different for humans. The first attack came fast. A massive energy beam that could melt through most ship defenses. But the UN Harmony wasn't most ships. It shifted. Not just moved. Shifted. Like water. Like something alive. The beam missed. The Kuril commander's voice changed, from calm to confused. Impossible, he said. Humans were good at doing impossible things. Hyunwoo's ship didn't just dodge, it used the attack. The energy from the beam was captured, redirected, transformed into something else. The ship's shields weren't just defensive, they were adaptive. Most military systems were about power, bigger weapons, stronger shields. Humans built systems that could think, systems that could learn, systems that could change. The second attack came from multiple directions, standard Kuril tactics. Attack from all sides, overwhelm the enemy, break through defenses. The harmony didn't block, it danced. Each weapon blast was not just avoided, it was used. Energy was captured, redirected. The ship was turning the Kuril's own attack into a weapon. On the bridge, Hyunwoo's team worked like one mind. No shouting, no panic, just calm, quick thinking. Each person knew exactly what to do, not because of strict military training, but because they understood the deeper goal. Survival was not about being the strongest. It was about being the most adaptable. The Kuril ships started to realize something was wrong. Their perfect attack patterns were falling apart. Their weapons were being turned against them. "This is not possible," the Kuril commander repeated. Hyunwoo finally spoke. His voice was calm. "Everything is possible," he said, "if you're willing to learn." The battle lasted less than 10 minutes. When it was over, no Kuril ships were destroyed, but they were completely defeated. They had come to teach a lesson. Instead, they had been taught something far more important. Humans were not just another species to be controlled. They were a force of nature. Han Jae-yun stood in the center of the Galactic Cultural Exchange Hall. Around her, holographic displays showed fragments of human experience. It was not a clean story. It was a messy, beautiful thing. The Kuril delegates watched. They thought they would see a simple timeline. Instead, they saw something alive. Art from a flooded city in Bangladesh. Music created by refugees. A dance that told the story of survival after a global pandemic. Paintings made from recycled materials. Poems written by children who had lost everything but found hope. Human culture was not about perfection. It was about transformation. Jae-yun began to speak. Her voice was soft, but it carried across the room like a wave. "We are not what we were yesterday," she said. "And tomorrow, we will not be what we are today." The first display showed a city. Not a perfect city. A city that had been destroyed and rebuilt 3 times. Each time, it looked different. Each time, it was stronger. In one corner, a video played. It showed people from different countries working together to solve a water crisis. They were not friends when they started. They became family by the end. The Kuril understood culture as something fixed, something that moved slowly. Humans saw culture as a living thing, always changing, always growing. Another display showed education, not in classrooms, everywhere. People learning from each other. A farmer teaching a computer scientist about soil. A child teaching an elder about new technology. Knowledge was not something you owned. It was something you shared. Jae-yun showed them art that came from pain. Paintings made by people who had lost everything. Music created in refugee camps. Stories written during the hardest times. "This is our strength," she said. "We do not hide our struggles. We turn them into something beautiful." The Kuril delegates were changing colors. Their skin showed confusion, respect, something close to fear. Human philosophy was not about big ideas. It was about small moments, about choosing to help, about finding hope when everything looked dark. A video played. It showed how a small community rebuilt after a major disaster. Not with big machines, with human hands, with human hearts. "We are not perfect," Jae-yun said, "but we keep trying." The displays showed war. They showed peace. They showed destruction. They showed rebuilding. Always rebuilding. Human culture was not a line. It was a web. everything connected, everything important. The Kirill understood systems. Humans understood connections. When the presentation ended, no one moved. Something had changed in the room. Something big. Humanity was not just a culture. It was a way of seeing the world. Li Jaehuan walked into the grand hall. Thousands of alien delegates watched. The room was silent, but it felt like something was about to explode. This was not going to be a normal speech. The Kirill Confederation had brought their most important leaders. They expected to hear a thank you. They expected to hear how humans would follow their rules. They were about to be very wrong. Jaehuan stood at the center of the stage. No notes, no screens, just a human ready to speak. "We are here," he began, "to talk about civilization." The word hung in the air. Civilization. Such a simple word. But today, it would mean something different. "You believe civilization is something you give," Jaehuan said. "We know civilization is something you create." He told a story. Not a long story. A human story. He spoke about a small island community that survived 3 major disasters. Each time, they'd rebuild. Not with help from outside. With their own hands. Their own minds. He talked about scientists who created new medical treatments in refugee camps. About farmers who invented new ways to grow food in impossible places. About children who learned to solve problems adults thought were impossible. "Civilization is not about being perfect," he said. "It is about being able to change." The Kirill leaders started to shift in their seats. Their skin was changing colors faster and faster, a sign of deep mental confusion. Jaehuan explained how humans saw the universe, not as a fixed thing, but as a problem to be solved. Every challenge was an opportunity. Every mistake was a chance to learn. He spoke about survival, not just physical survival, the survival of hope, the survival of possibility. "You think you are protecting the galaxy," he said. "We know the galaxy needs to be challenged." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't get angry. He simply told the truth, and the truth was powerful. Humans had survived climate disasters, global pandemics, near total destruction. Each time, they did not just survive. They learned, they grew, they changed. The Kirill had perfect systems. Humans had living systems, systems that could heal, systems that could grow, systems that could dream. "We are not asking for your permission," Jaehuan said. "We are telling you how the universe works." When he finished speaking, no one moved. The silence was loud. Something had changed, and everyone in the room knew it. Humanity was not just another species. They were a force of nature. The galaxy was changing, not slowly, not carefully, but like a living thing waking up. Everywhere, systems that had been fixed for thousands of years began to move, to shift, to breathe. Trade routes that had followed the same paths for centuries suddenly changed direction. Communication networks that were once rigid became flexible. Rules that seemed impossible to break began to bend. Humans were not conquering. They were transforming. In one corner of the galaxy, a planet that had been stuck in economic trouble for generations suddenly found a new way forward. They looked at human economic models, not to copy, but to understand. Another system redesigned its entire education approach. Learning was no longer about memorizing. It was about solving real problems, about asking questions, about being curious. The Kirill Confederation watched. They did not understand at first. How could one species create so much change? But humans did not create change through force. They created change through possibility. A group of scientists from 3 different planetary systems came together. They would never have talked before. Now, they were solving problems no one thought could be solved. One planet learned how to clean toxic waste using methods humans had developed. Another found new ways to grow food in impossible places. A third created a communication system that could work even when everything else was broken. The changes were not always big. Sometimes they were small. A new way of thinking, a different approach to an old problem. Humans brought something the galaxy had forgotten: the ability to look at a problem and see an opportunity. Trade became something different, not about taking, about creating new value, about helping each other grow. Technology stopped being about having the most powerful machine. It became about creating systems that could change, that could learn, that could heal themselves. Diplomatic relations were no longer about who was stronger. They became about how different groups could work together, how they could solve problems no one thought could be solved. The Chiral Confederation realized something important. Humanity was not just another species to be managed. They were a catalyst, a force that could make everything around them better. Everywhere, systems that had been asleep for thousands of years began to wake up, to move, to grow. The galaxy was learning to breathe again, and humans had shown the way. Not through conquest, but through possibility. Time passed, years, decades. The galaxy looked different now. Everywhere, something had changed, not just on the surface, deep inside, in the way people thought, in the way systems worked. The oldest leaders of the Chiral Confederation gathered. They were not young anymore, but they remembered. They remembered the day everything changed. "We thought we were teaching," one of them said. Her skin was pale, almost transparent. "We did not know we were going to learn." They looked at the reports. The numbers told a story, but numbers never tell the full story. Planets that were dying were now alive. Systems that were broken were now working. Communities that had no hope now created their own futures. Humans had not conquered. They had something more powerful. They had shown a way of thinking. Every problem was not a wall. It was a door. The reports showed how different systems now worked. Education was not about memorizing facts. It was about solving real problems. Technology was not about having the most powerful machine. It was about creating systems that could change. In one report, a small community turned a dead industrial area into a living ecosystem. They did not wait for help. They created their own solution. Another report showed how 3 different planetary systems worked together to solve a water crisis. They did not fight. They created something new. The Chiral leaders understood something important now. Civilization was not a finished thing. It was always growing, always changing. Humans had not been what anyone expected. They were not perfect, but they were something else. They were possible. The oldest leader looked at a picture. It showed a human child working with alien children. They were building something. Nobody knew exactly what, but they were building. "We thought we would teach them," he said softly. "They taught us everything." Across the galaxy, people were doing something different now. They were not just surviving. They were creating. The universe was not a fixed thing. It was a problem to be solved, an opportunity to be discovered. Humanity had shown the way, not through power, not through technology, but through something more simple, more powerful: hope. The ability to look at a broken thing and see a chance to build something new. The galaxy was learning to breathe again, and humans had shown the way.